Hello and welcome back to another Stadium Creator how-to video, and today we are talking about roofs. Of course, we'll talk about what climates and areas actually need them, and then of course we'll talk about how to build a realistic retractable roof in MLB The Show. Alright, so first let's talk about why stadiums actually need retractable roofs, and then who and kind of what parts of the country actually need them. Um, First up, we'll start off with uh, excessive rain. The only retractable roof that is actually used for this is T-Mobile Park in Seattle, where they get a lot of rain. So with this type of roof, you aren't actually trying to control climate. So you can kind of see in it that it just kind of covers the playing field, but it's actually completely open air still. So you'll still have kind of elements coming in from outside through the sides, like the cold and all that. But really, it's just there to protect the rain and make sure it's not raining down on the field. Mostly for the fans' purposes, but also just keeping the field up to par too. So that is the first reason. The second reason is going to be excessive heat. That's why you also see stadiums with retractable roofs. Mainly you'll see those in like Miami, Phoenix, Vegas will have something when they get their ballpark made. And yeah, and then the most recent one is Texas. So you can kind of see the difference with those roofs. This is going to be Miami's. The biggest things you'll notice is they're more fully enclosed. You have to fully enclose the stadium if you're going to control the climate inside, because you can't have that leaking out where all of a sudden you're trying to cool down the air outside. That would be very expensive. So you can kind of see what it looks like when it's closed. It's fully enclosed. So that's Miami's. You can also see the same thing with Globe Life, which is Texas' new ballpark. You can just see when it's closed, it's fully enclosed. There's no elements from the outside coming in at all. So you'll see that a lot with excessive heat areas, just because you have to control the climate. So Phoenix does the same thing. Vegas will probably do something similar, although their ballpark is a little different. This is what we got so far. So, but you can even kind of see in this one that this is going to rotate around. You can kind of see the track of it right here. So this is going to rotate around if it's too hot, and likely act as like a sunshade. Yeah. So, and that was kind of their other ballpark that was proposed, which I actually like better. But you can kind of see what it looks like there. So with those being like the two main purposes that you have a roof, from excessive rain or excessive heat, you kind of get the rest of the ballparks that don't really fall into those issues, and you'll probably never see retractable roofs in those cities. So stuff like if Anaheim builds a new ballpark, you're not going to see a retractable roof there. Same with like the Northeast stuff. They get some rain, but it's not enough to where they're going to justify building a roof. So all those like Midwest cities, it's kind of like Cleveland will get snow and stuff in April sometimes, but after that it kind of clears up. So you won't probably see retractable roofs in any of those cities either. So like Minneapolis, their new ballpark doesn't have one. Cleveland, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, all those, they're probably not going to have a retractable roof either. Same with the Northeast cities, so like Yankees, Mets, they didn't build a roof. Baltimore, Washington, all those. So This is kind of important just because when it comes to realism and actually building roofs, this is the kind of stuff that you'll have to factor in, unless you're just creating a generic ballpark. But if you're actually building it geared around an actual real life city, that'll kind of determine what's realistic for that area too. So see it with my own, like I've created ballparks for lately, mainly like Phoenix and Las Vegas, and then I always do one for Tampa Bay. So all of those areas are going to have excessive heat and humidity, so you're going to want something to climate control those areas, or those ballparks, which is why I always create a retractable roof with them. So all right, so first things first, let's kind of just talk about the actual design of roofs a little bit. I've got my Phoenix ballpark here that I'll use kind of as an example, just when talking about it. So the main thing you want to do in terms of roofs is you kind of want to figure out what the overall look of it is going to be. And a lot of that's going to be based on like what's around it, and then if you need it fully enclosed, like if you're trying to climate control it, or if you're just trying to do like a sun shade or a rain shade, that kind of thing. So that kind of determines the overall look of things. So in this one, I just kind of went for more of a kind of a sunshade in a way, just because it is Phoenix and it gets really hot, but it doesn't quite have like the humidity that the Southeast has, where you'd want to actually climate control it. So with this one, the main thing you want to focus on is just kind of like what view you want out of it. And this one I have like a kind of like a convention center here, so you can kind of see that from home plate I wanted the view out to that, with kind of like a public area back there, and then same with all the seating, just kind of like a view of the city. So that kind of determines how you actually want to orient your roof. In this one, you can kind of see I made it go side to side like this, so it'll come out just directly over the field is what it would actually do. Can't do that in game, but that's kind of the idea of it. So what you want to factor in with the roofs is the actual like trajectory of balls that are hit. So when it comes to roofs, think of a home run that's being hit from home plate. It's going to go up and then back down out here, right? So you want the highest part of your roof to be the highest, where the highest part of the point of the ball trail will go. So that's likely going to be like right in here. So it's kind of like this line is what you want to be the highest, right above the field, and then you want to center it kind of based on that. I'll actually get into the details on how I actually construct these later, but that's just kind of like the overall theme. As it comes over the stands, it doesn't need to be as high, so you can see mine just kind of tapers down, goes up to where the highest part of it needs to be, and then back down over the stands. Nobody's going to be hitting this part with the ball, so it can come back down again. And then what you want to figure out is kind of how the roof would actually close. So mine, you can kind of see it runs on this line and then this line over here. So it would just kind of come out here if it could. And then ideally I would have kind of made it curved, but I did not in this case. Yeah, you can kind of see how it would open and close. All right, so this is another example. This is my DraftKings ballpark, which is my Vegas ballpark. So in my franchise, I moved the A's to Vegas. So this is what I did for them. Same kind of thing as the last one. You kind of want to have an idea of what you want, what the overall goal is. So again, this is going to be more of like a shade in a way over the ballpark. And then with this one, I wanted views out to like what would be the Vegas Strip. So you can kind of see how I did that. So you got like the Vegas Strip replica in the back, just so that all the fans would have a view of that. So that's kind of how I oriented that. And then in this one, my other one, my Phoenix one was like this. With this one, I made it close kind of directly over the field from behind home plate. So that's kind of the other thing that you want to keep in mind is where you're actually storing the roof. If you look at like T-Mobile, they store it beyond the wall right here. It's kind of like this. Same with like Houston and some of the other ones. But if you're in more of a scenic city, that's going to block off. You're going to block off what could be like a prime view for your fans. So imagine like sitting here and this was just a giant roof. It's not as cool. And it obstructs the view. So that's why I did it like this. So everybody in the ballpark is actually just under this. And they have a completely unobstructed view of the strip. So that's kind of just something to keep in mind. And then if it had to close, it would just close straight out. So you'd still have a little bit of a view, but you'd be protected. So the idea is that most of the games would happen when it was opened, and you could actually just have a great view of the Vegas Strip in this case. So that's another way to think about things. Again, it kind of goes on the same tracks again, and then it would just come out here and just cover basically all the seating area. You can kind of see. Ideally, I would have made it go a little bit further, but I ran out of memory, so I had to. That's kind of the same thing with the Phoenix one too. So ideally, you want them to come out and cover as much as they can and as much as reasonably makes sense. Yeah, and then what you're trying to do is basically just cover the seating area. So I have all this as like a shade so that all of that is actually in. It would be shaded during the game, and then it could cover more seats as necessary if it started to rain or just be super hot. So, all right, here is kind of one more example of what I was talking about in terms of view. This would be my first version of my Tampa ballpark. So Tampa Bay, like you're gonna have the bay to look at. There's just gonna be a lot of fun things to view. So with that in mind, I kind of kept So in this case, we have a harbor. So yeah, so you can kind of see same thing. So I put the roof behind the home plate seating just to get it out of the way, Again, I didn't want it behind like the walls. That's kind of like, you don't really see that now with new ballparks that are being designed. Everybody's putting them back here so that you have an unobstructed view of whatever the city is. So this is kind of another, just a more fun way to create a roof, I guess. You just kind of, again, going back to the purpose of it, and then kind of seeing what you can do to make it more artistic in how it functions and all that. So in this one, kind of the same thing. Tampa, you need a roof of some sort, especially like a sunshade. Dealing with humidity would be ideal too, but there's a lot of assets that the game does not have yet to fake that more so. So with this one, I just kind of made like a fan design. You can kind of see how this one would close too. In this one, we have like the center pillars back here. That's kind of like the base of it in this case, and then they extend out. And then what you'd have is, this is your roof track now, is this. So these would essentially unfold out, come around, and cover it that way. Same thing with this one. The idea is that they would come out. You can see they're kind of attached to those. So they would come around, and you can't really curve it nicely. But you can kind of get the idea of like how it would function in real life. So it would just kind of fan around, and then you'd get a sunshade that kind of went like that and then went to the point there. So same kind of thing as before too. Your highest points are still going to be right here. So that would cover that, and then it wouldn't get down to this level until well beyond the wall, and nobody's hitting it that far. So this thing is just figuring out how it would work, and then what you can do to make it function, and then also be aesthetically pleasing. So you can kind of see they would have still a nice view of like the harbor and all that, but then you can kind of see how it would come around, and you'd essentially just have it tapering off down towards that. So that's another way to do it too. All right, so the last piece of the puzzle is kind of just how I construct them in general. You can kind of see by reverse engineering this one in a little bit of way. The way I do it is I actually just start with the first couple tiles, and I start with them right above home plate, just like right behind it. I get as close to that as possible without going into the actual field. And I get that lined up first. So the way I did it in this one is mainly with these three pieces. So the piece there, and that piece. You can kind of see I just line that perfectly first. I mean, it's not perfect, but I just got that lined up how I wanted it. This is the most critical part, is just making sure those first pieces are aligned the absolute best that you can, because everything else is going to be based on that. So if those are crooked or off by a little bit, then it's going to make things look weird. So you can kind of see how I did that, and then you just kind of build from there. So that's what I did. I had that one placed. Then I did the first row just all the way down here. So once you get the first couple of pieces there, then you can raise it to the height you want. And then I built everything based on that. So you kind of come in here, make sure that's completely aligned. And then what I actually did is just created one side. So you can kind of see how I did that one. You just kind of mess with it a little bit. That would normally be part of that. So you can kind of see I did one whole part first. Got it down to the height that I wanted. And then I placed the track after, actually. So once I got that down to the height that I wanted, then place that in. And then what you can do is, what I did is just copied that. I don't know if I can do it right now, but you just copy it and then you can just flip it around. And then you align that perfectly. Like I did there. That's how I did that one. You can kind of see it. It lines up. But you can kind of see how that is the exact same piece as the other side. And then once you have that first row all the way down on both sides, you just copy. So you can kind of see exactly how I did it. You just copy the rows. And that's how you get them lined up. That's why starting off with the best alignment that you can is going to help you a lot in the end, because it's going to mess up everything if it's not aligned correctly. So you can see the same thing, did that on that side, copied it. And then once you have the base of it in, you can just go in and you can kind of see what I did too. You just go in, and if you want it to be more angled, then you can just go in and take off a piece. I added two here to make it extend out a little bit, and then did the same philosophy with this. This is just an overhang for the stadium. So did that. This side, you can see same thing. So just added the two there and then removed one piece there from that base thing that I had, base piece. So seems complicated, but it's not really complicated. So I built the roof out and got it far enough out, then put in the tracks, and then figured out how the stands were going to work from there with those angles. So that's where you can see I blocked stuff off just to make it more interesting too. So block stuff off with the pillars, and then the one other thing I did with this ballpark is actually created like this back shade, and it's kind of the normal stuff. So you just build the one around the stands, and then I just layered that with 2 more layers, and then just a straight one to actually top it off so that it was enclosed. So that's how you can see that I got that effect in the end. But yeah, that's kind of how I do it. If you're trying to mimic a fully enclosed stadium, you can build around it too, just to enclose it and make it seem like it's climate controlled. In that case, you probably would want to not taper these off. Just make one giant piece that goes straight up, instead of, you can kind of see how I did 3 and then went up a little bit, because in this case it's kind of a sunshade, so it just helps with that. Alright, so that is kind of the overall philosophy on designing roofs and how they should look, and then also how you would actually design them for a specific region. Your main, just kind of looking at the main cities that are looking at an expansion team right now, you got Portland would have the same issues as Seattle. You're going to want to build for rain in mind there. If you're looking at Charlotte or Nashville, maybe a retractable roof if you're talking about climate control. I know it can get pretty hot there. I've never been to either place though, so I don't fully know. Those places could also have an open air ballpark. If you're looking at something like Montreal or something that might be a little colder, you could do a retractable roof, more climate controlled too. But yeah, it just kind of depends on where you're building a new stadium. If you're looking in like LA or San Diego or something like that and building a new ballpark for them, they're probably just going to be open air. You're not going to need a retractable roof for those areas. Same with your Midwest cities. Some of them you can get away with it. I know the Twins kind of temporarily considered it, but ultimately they ended up just building an open air ballpark. So just base it on the city that you're looking into, and then just keep like your views in mind as to how you're actually orientating it, and go from there. It's fun. Just yeah, it definitely takes some practice, but it is fun to create them in the end. Hopefully they actually allow us to close roofs in the game eventually, but for now we'll just deal with faking it. So hope you learned something from the video, and just feel free to comment or ask questions if you want. Thank you.